My name is Horace Carter. I'm class of '89. I'm the president of the Alumni Executive Board. I would like to begin by welcoming Mr. Eddie Batey and his family, our distinguished faculty, faculty emeriti, alumni, and special guests to the unveiling of the 20th portrait in a series of faculty portraits that are on display here in the dining hall and in the entrance to the campus center. The portrait series was created by the Alumni Executive Board in 2005 to honor MUS faculty members who have dedicated their lives to serving generations of owls and our great school. The campus has transformed in many ways over the last 2 decades, but these portraits serve as a daily reminder that despite changes in the halls and the faces that fill them, our faculty has been the constant. Their unwavering commitment to provide the highest quality teaching, coaching, and mentoring, all while creating experiences that our alumni treasure for a lifetime, help set the MUS experience apart. Simply put, our faculty are the foundation upon which the excellence of MUS rests, and we honor those in this collection. We hope to inspire those still in the classrooms. Upon establishing this annual honor, the Alumni Board determined the criteria for selecting each faculty portrait subject. To qualify, nominees cannot be members of the current faculty. They must have served MUS for a minimum of 15 years. There's a remarkably high number of faculty who meet this criteria, which to me just shows the level of dedication and commitment that they have to this school. And having personally been a part of many nomination meetings, I can say that there's an impressive list of formal faculty that we have to choose from. The discussions before we vote are always engaging and thoughtful, and often the voting goes on for many rounds. So it is no small feat to end up on these walls. This evening, we are here to honor a longtime teacher and administrator, Mr. Richard E. Batey, whom the Alumni Executive Board selected as this year's subject in the series. Tonight, you will hear how Mr. Batey profoundly influenced MUS, his students, and fellow faculty and staff members while becoming a genuine model of service who so honorably represents our school community. I'm fortunate in this instance because when I was in school, I actually did know Coach Batey. You may be shocked to learn I didn't run track, but I did have a couple of classes from him, one of which was lower school life science. Now, one of the sections in lower school life science is basic sex ed. Now, you don't have to have a robust imagination to envision what that scene is like. 13 to 14-year-old boys learning about sex ed. And I can assure you that it takes a steady hand and a certain personality, the exact right combination of gravitas and humor to pull it off. And Coach Batey certainly did. And he was an excellent teacher. I think the lowest score in that section was something like 98. Yeah, I think Jim Gilliland misspelled his name. I'm Gilliland. In addition to that, when I was in high school, Coach Batey was not just teacher, he was the guidance counselor. And I had, we'll say, a ne'er-do-well friend in high school whose name I won't mention. I'll tell you his name. His name's Josh Hardison. So Josh, upon learning that Coach Batey was not allowed to reveal anything that he told him in his capacity as guidance counselor, would come in to Coach Batey's office every Monday and regale him with stories of all of his misdeeds over the weekend. Coach Batey, and I would go along just for fun, just to watch the show. Coach Batey never lost his temper, never lost his cool. He'd be like, Josh, you can't do that. Josh, you're probably gonna get arrested for that. That's bad for you. The consummate professional, which is one of the reasons that we are here tonight. So, with that, our first speaker this evening is our headmaster, Peter D. Sanders. Pete is now in his 8th year at MUS, where we are benefiting from his nearly 4 decades of experience as an independent school educator and administrator. At his core, Peter is a teacher. In addition to his myriad duties as headmaster, he also teaches a section of U.S. history to freshmen. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished headmaster, Pete Sanders.
Thank you, Horace, and good evening to what is one of my favorite events at the school, the Portrait Unveiling. You're going to enjoy the next hour or so. We're here this evening to honor Richard E. Eddie Batey for his 38 years of humble and dedicated service to Memphis University School, and to recognize the impact that he's made on the lives of students and teachers as a member of the faculty and staff. We are honored to have with us his wife, Honor, and their son, Xander, MUS class of 2009. Born and raised in Memphis, Eddie matriculated at Rhodes College, where he earned degrees in psychology and biology and graduated Phi Beta Kappa. He then studied medicine at the University of Tennessee for 2 years until he felt the call of the classroom. In the fall of 1982, then headmaster Gene Thorne named Eddie as a lower school science teacher, and soon after as coach cross-country track and lower school basketball. While serving as a full-time teacher and coaching 3 sports, Eddie completed his master's degree in counseling at the University of Memphis. Upon receiving his master's, he would become director of counseling services at the school and served for more than 15 years as a guidance counselor for both the upper and lower schools, while also teaching psychology. He made his mark as a guidance counselor and was noted by many students for his kind-hearted mentoring. In recognition of his excellence in the classroom, Eddie received the John M. Nail Outstanding Teacher Award in 1989. He was also honored by the class of 2002, who gave as their gift a trophy case in recognition of his unflagging support and guidance. From 1994 to 2000, Eddie would serve as head cross-country coach. The cross-country teams saw much success during his 13-year run as head coach, with state titles in 1991 and 1992, serving as the high watermark not only for Eddie's tenure, but in the history of MUS. However, success in life was always what Eddie hammered home to his teams. Ask any alumnus who ran under Eddie, and they will tell you he always placed the highest priority on molding champions of character. Students who graduated in the 2000s and later are just as likely to know Eddie for his role as faculty advisor to the Civic Service Organization, a group he's still active with in retirement, I should add. He embodied a tireless devotion to serving those in need, and a generation of MUS alumni can point to Eddie as a transforming person and in helping them understand the need of servant leaders, especially in Memphis and for Memphians. This focus on producing service leaders became prioritized in 2007 with the creation of the Memphis Leaders Program. Eddie devised a curriculum that was part city and school history, part leadership and development, and part volunteer projects and field trips. Always an advocate of getting students to go where the need was, Eddie would often be seen driving busloads of students to and from all parts of our city. As Jonathan Large, Eddie's successor as CSO advisor, put it, Mr. Batey drew on his psychological understanding and insights, civic service, knowledge of history, and academic skills to help develop students into student-servant leaders. And he developed in them a true concern for and an informed interest in the trials, temptations, joys, and sorrows of their region and its people. Some of these students are now using the intellectual and moral foundation they developed in Memphis Leaders as the basis for their careers and volunteer work in our city as adults. In a fitting tribute to his vision for MUS students, Eddie himself won the Jean Barbie Hale Award for Outstanding Service in 2014. After 38 years of service to MUS, Eddie retired in 2022. Memphis University School owes a debt of gratitude to Eddie Batey. As a coach, teacher, a counselor, and advisor, he gently and humbly pushed our students to place others before themselves and to value strong character as the highest measure of success in life. For all of us at MUS, this portrait will serve as a reminder of the service that Eddie rendered to our students, his colleagues, and the entire MUS community. I can't think of a greater example of a consummate schoolman than Eddie Batey. Congratulations, Eddie, to you and your family. Congratulations on this well-deserved recognition from the Alumni Executive Board. Enjoy the evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sanders. Next on the program, but a first for our portrait series events, Mr. David Bradford, MUS class of 1995, will present Eddie with an honorary proclamation from the Shelby County Commission. As a student, David ran relays for the Owls track team and was heavily influenced by Eddie as a leader and mentor. David remains connected to the school as an alumni class representative for his classmates and has served our community on the Shelby County Commission since 2018. Please join me in welcoming David Bradford.
Thank you. So I graduated MUS in 1995. So while I was here, Eddie was our guidance counselor. He was our faculty advisor for the Civic Service Club, and of course, he was our cross-country coach. I joined the cross-country team shortly after my 9th grade year, and one of the first things we did is we took a trip to Lindsey Wilson College in Kentucky. Coach Batey loaded up the Econoline van and sent us up there. And I learned a couple of things on that trip. The first thing was the proper way to empty a Gatorade bottle out of a moving vehicle. I'll let Malcolm and Will Mays explain more on that one, not in front of the podium, in front of everybody. But what I really learned from Coach Batey was the partnership and the care that he had for the students and the team. We were up there with a number of other teams from all over the country running twice a day in tobacco fields, and Coach Batey was the only coach that was doing the entire workout with the team. He was right there with us side by side. And so from that, I certainly learned his commitment to his team, his caring for his students and everyone around him, and then also his service. That service factored onto me and in my life because I've become, I'm a deacon at my church. I serve on the Habitat for Humanity board. I serve on the YMCA board. It pushed me so far to also serve my community through running for office and obviously becoming a Shelby County Commissioner. And so while I get to be a Shelby County Commissioner and serve the constituents of Shelby County, I get to set property taxes and all kinds of other wonderful things. I get lots of complaints about our county clerk. That's another thing I get to do. But one of the more joyous things I get to do is present resolutions. And so today, I'm presenting a resolution honoring the work that Eddie has brought to the community. I'm not going to read all the whereases. As you all can see, it's pretty long. Pete actually already hit several of these, but I'll give the start in and then I'll give the wrap up, and that'll pretty much give you an idea of what's here. Whereas it is with great pleasure that the Shelby County Board of Commissioners acknowledges the years of service and dedication of Mr. Eddie Batey to Memphis University School. And I'm going to skip all the whereases because we've already hit it, and I know Eddie loves people talking about him. So, whereas Mr. Batey had an enormously positive impact on all the students, families, and colleagues he served with at MUS, now therefore be it resolved that the Shelby County Board of Commissioners do hereby honor and celebrate the work of Mr. Richard Edgar Batey.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is a legend in his own right to decades of owls, and his portrait hangs in the Morgan foyer of Humphreys Hall in our Headmaster collection. Over the years, Eddie and Emma have crossed paths on a variety of levels, both professionally and personally, across several generations of the Batey and Hagewood families. While on the faculty here, Eddie spent the early years of his time in the lower school and Ellis in the upper school. But their mutual respect for each other and the school led to a bond that would last each into their retirements. While Mr. Hagewood could no doubt share tales or tributes for each of the people on these walls, tonight we are grateful to have him here to help us honor Eddie. Please welcome to the podium Headmaster Emeritus Ellis Hagewood.
You know, I'm deeply grateful to the Alumni Executive Board for creating this faculty portrait series, the idea of which came from the fertile brain of our peerless Director of Advancement, Perry DeMint. I think these paintings capture the spirit and character of revered teachers whom we have known over the years, and they connect our current students and our new faculty to the tradition of excellence in teaching and the idiosyncratic personalities that mark the illustrious history of the MUS faculty over the decades. And I think you can just look around this room and you know these are idiosyncratic personalities. They're all different. This evening, the portrait of Eddie Batey, of course, joins this pantheon of esteemed figures in the history of Memphis University School, teachers whose memory we and succeeding generations will never let die. And I'm happy we're joined this evening by Eddie's wife, Honor, without whom Eddie wouldn't be here. And her sister is down from New York City, Liz Kandriva. Welcome. Their son, Xander, is class of 2009. And believe it or not, using FaceTime right now, Dr. Richard Batey, the Professor Emeritus of New Testament Studies at Rhodes College, and Eddie's dad is watching this. And his mom, longtime esteemed teacher at Harding Academy and a community leader, really, with distinction. They are both at home watching this, along with one of Eddie's sisters, Dr. Yvonne Batey. Another sister, the other sister, is with us today, Kay Batey Brown, and we're so glad you're here as well. It's this distinguished family, really. In his gospel, the Apostle John includes a brief story that Jesus told that begins with an arresting and familiar line. I am the good shepherd, said Jesus. Then he goes on to say the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand and he's not concerned about the sheep. I'm the good shepherd, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Now, Eddie, your dad used this story very effectively once many years ago when he was speaking to a group of Memphis Association of Independent Schools teachers. I remember it very well. In the story, of course, Jesus makes a very clear contrast between two very different attitudes toward life and one's responsibility to other people. The hired hand minds his own business. He takes care of himself. Now, he may care for people up to a point because of real or perceived benefits to himself. But a shepherd cares for people. out of genuine compassion and concern. He exhibits a self-giving love that involves him so deeply in the lives of other people that he'll risk his own life, his own possessions, his own desires to protect and care for theirs. The shepherd has God's heart for the weak and those who need protection. And Eddie, you've always been the consummate shepherd at Memphis University School as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor, as a counselor. And you've been that way away from the school for this city as well. Mr. Barry Ray, most recently head of the upper school and assistant headmaster, noted that, quote, Batey is one of the most selfless and giving people I've ever been around. He's a person of faith. His service toward others in the school comes from his understanding of why God put him on the earth. He believes in the goodness and mercy of God, and he lives to direct that same goodness and mercy toward others, end quote. Aloof from faction and beloved by students and his fellow teachers, Eddie provided balance and harmony among all with whom he worked because he took to heart the Apostle Paul's exhortation about what we wear and clothed himself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Ever a calming influence, a man of wit and humor, and a leader who served the common good of this school and the best interests of his students. For 38 years, he taught science, health, personal development, psychology, social studies, and Memphis Leaders, a unique course he developed to help students understand the city of Memphis, its history, its assets, its problems, its need for their leadership and service when they became adults. He coached cross country, the long distance guys in track, and lower school basketball. Bobby Alston, track coach and athletic director for many years, recalled lots of miles together riding vans across the state. And he said that Batey also coached the pole vaulters because they needed his psychology background. I think you have to be just a little cray-cray to do it in the first place. He counseled in the upper school and the lower school. He directed both groups for a while. Innumerable hours with students, with teachers, with the families of students, all who were in need at the time. Joe Abrams, former director of counseling, said, Mr. Batey is a consummate professional who paved the way for counseling services at MUS. And he directed our civic service organization for 15 years and left it in good hands with his protege, Jonathan Large. He volunteered chaperoning school dances. Actually, that was a requirement at the time. But he did chaperone trips with youth legislature, Model UN to Nashville. Those aren't easy. And an MUS trip to England and Scotland. Eddie lived by the words of Paul to the church at Philippi. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but to the interests of others. For decades, he encouraged students to look to the interest of others, engaging them in service activities with dozens of nonprofits and schools and community organizations, such as, and this is a short list, Knowledge Quest, Agape, Memphis Athletic Ministries, Lester Community Center, Streets Ministries, Service Over Self, Cornerstone Preparatory School, Carpenter Art Garden, Maria's Preschool, Refugee Empowerment Program, Balmoral Ridgeway Elementary School, Kingsbury Elementary School, the Forest Spence 5K, Rise Against Hunger, Shelby Farms, Special Olympics, Salvation Army, the lower school service days. Of course, he was already himself personally engaged with most of these organizations and a host of others as well, which I have a list of, but I'm not going to read. I'll coin a phrase and say too numerous to mention. Mr. Large, current head of our community services organization, wrote that after assuming leadership himself of the community service organization, he often contacted a community organization for the first time about the possibility of allowing students to do a project with their organization. He said he would often be met on the other line with hesitation or skepticism. If so, Mr. Large said, I would simply say, Mr. Batey suggested that I call you. There would be a pause and a miraculous transformation in tone, he said. Mr. Batey asked you to call? Well, that changes everything. Of course, we will help. That change in attitude, Large added, was the result of the goodwill and friendships that Mr. Batey has built up through more than 40 years of service throughout Memphis. With his energy, his cheerfulness, and his faithfulness. Now, he does have some steel in his otherwise benign, merciful countenance. One of his cross-country boys, and this came from the boy who was punished, one of his cross-country boys, captain of that year's team, told about a fight that he got into with his teammates before the regional meet. Coach Batey suspended him from the regional, even though his absence might mean that the team wouldn't make the state meet, wouldn't qualify. But that young man recently wrote me and said that was a principled decision. It took guts and it set a great example. I have great respect for Coach and what he stood for, and it made me a better man. It was an example of his integrity. Batey was a man students could emulate. John Kemper, longtime headmaster at Andover, remarked, quote, every contact with a student communicates what the teacher is and stands for as a person. His love of things of the mind, his integrity, his moral values. John Paul Hickey, cross-country runner, class of 93, wrote, quote, the work ethic he galvanized in our team was exemplified by his own work ethic and the sacrificial leadership he provided for the team. He was up at the crack of dawn. He was up at the crack of dawn with us during cross-country season for our morning runs, and he gave up multiple weekends and parts of his summer to take the team to meets and camps. He was a teacher and coach whose best efforts aimed not at what the boys were, but what they could become. And I think perhaps in the crucible of athletics, on the cross-country course or on the track, he probably made his greatest long-term impact on the boys of MUS. I would like for you to listen to just a few of the boys who commented about Mr. Batey. This from Sandy Hooper. He insisted that we treat each other well, that we respect our competitors, and that we use all the talent God had given us. We won the state championship and took the lessons on character with us to college. Running for Coach Batey was the highlight of my 3 years at MUS. He was a first-rate coach and role model. Or this again from John Paul Hickey. He inspired a sense of resolve to attain whatever goals we set before ourselves. He authentically cared for the team and brought us all together as a team and not as a group of individual runners. He did all of this with a smile on his face and without taking himself too seriously. Or this from Rob Bell. I would just say that cross country was essential to my development as a man, and I still rely on those lessons as a Marine officer. In fact, I wouldn't be a Marine officer without cross country. I struggled at officer candidate school, but I was so fast that they assumed I had some sense of self-discipline. Casey Nolan. While the state championship hardware reflected the technical coaching and leadership skills of Coach Batey, the life lessons about being a champion of character are what our team and I learned for the long term. Coach Batey taught us about trust, persistence, faith, loyalty, and camaraderie, sprinkled with his dry wit. Coach Batey had short strides, but he was long in wisdom. Cheers to Coach Batey. Craig Eisenberg. At 49 years old, the father of two boys, 12 and 16, who both run cross country, I am reminded of the influence Coach Batey had on me as a coach and mentor when I was the same age as my boys. He taught us far more than how to run competitively. He would also choose to suffer alongside us, embodying what it means to be part of a team in a sport that can often feel like an individual pursuit. I continue to embrace the sport of long-distance running, and it serves as a constant reminder of the lessons Coach Batey instilled in me 30 years ago. Hard work, perseverance, compassion, and selflessness. I'm thankful for the opportunity to honor Coach Batey's legacy. And finally, from Brian Kelly. Coach Batey endeared himself to us with a certain vulnerability and openness rare among athletic coaches. He had heart. He taught us, yes, to, quote, do the work, end quote. My journal shows we ran 838 miles together in the fall semester of 1992. But he also taught us to support our friends and teammates in thoughtful ways with words that transport feelings. As a regular matter, he would ask us individually to change our own race in order to support a teammate who perhaps struggled with the hills or needed a strategic push to the finish line. He showed us how to set goals, choose priorities, but also how to relax, meditate, and imagine. He would cry on the practice field, standing in the mud after a tough workout, and talk about things like joy and regret instead of beating CBHS or whatever. He was an exceptional coach, and his life lessons have stayed with me for over 30 years. Matt Bakke, recently retired from coaching and teaching here, submitted this story. When I first came to MUS, Coach Batey was a varsity cross-country coach. I was asked to coach the lower school team. In one of our initial meetings, I asked him to tell me about his expectations for the lower school cross-country team. Well, he said he wanted me to introduce the boys to the sport and ensure that they had a positive experience. Shortly after that meeting, a student stopped me in the hall and asked me, "Are you the new lower school cross-country coach?" And when Matt said yes, the boy said, "Did you know that the lower school cross-country team has won 5 straight championships?" So I thought to myself, I better add winning to that expectations list. One of the highlights of my career, Matt said, was coaching Xander in cross country and track. And then Matt went on to say, to me, Eddie Batey epitomizes the term servant leader. His selfless attitude, his passion for the school, and his love for the students were evident every day. Well, I agree with you, Coach Bakke. I think we all do. That's a good assessment. So, Coach Batey, Mr. Batey, Counselor Batey, we salute you tonight on your selection by our alumni for this award. And of course, you do join a highly venerated group of former teachers and coaches who gave themselves to the boys of MUS and to this school magnanimously, and who have led with distinction. For 38 years, you loved this great school and the boys you taught, coached, mentored, and counseled with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength, but especially with your heart. Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, E. Buddy Hagewood. Next, please, to the podium. Please welcome to the podium Mr. Malcolm Saxon, class of 1993. As a student, Malcolm was a servant, athlete, and leader. When he wasn't hosting a basketball pep rally or working on the staff of the Owls Hoot or the Owl, he was an accomplished runner for the cross country and track teams, both of which finished with medal honors his senior year. On the cross-country team, he had a record-setting year and finished first in the state meet. He was also named the McDonald's West Tennessee Runner of the Year. Malcolm served on the Civic Service Organization Executive Committee and still found time to be a member of the Professional Prognosticators Club. Today, Malcolm serves as the Dean of Students for Christ Covenant School in Ridgeland, Mississippi, where he has been for nearly a decade. Ladies and gentlemen, Malcolm Saxon.
All right, dear MUS, how kind the fate. I feel like I should be in trouble. I got 3 separate calls that said, "Are you going to be a safe speaker?" And I think there were memories of early 90s. I've grown up a little bit, and a lot of it has to do with Coach Batey, but I'm going to be a very safe speaker in most parts here. Mr. Sanders, Mr. Dement, distinguished guests, alums, MUS legends, and Honor Batey, of course, and Coach Eddie Batey. It's great to stand before you today. It's going to be an impossible task for me to communicate with this important foundational relationship that I have with Coach Batey through the years. Like you, teachers, administrators, former students, athletes, I think you're about to hear some more cross-country stories. This is probably as much as you've heard about cross-country in a long time, but bless you. I always felt that we were a cross-country school. Coach Austin, I know what y'all were doing was important, but cross-country, I felt kind of overtook y'all in the early 90s a little bit. But I too benefited immensely from an important relationship with Coach, the student-athlete one. Speaking of, Coach Rubio is here. Speaking of legends, I think Coach Batey ran for Coach Rubio here, Harding Academy. We revered you across the way, across Park Avenue. It's awesome to see you. Coach, there's a lot of folks that love and respect you out here, and it's excellent to be a part. And the privilege of running for Coach Batey from starting in 1989, a mere 35 years ago. Coach, we stand before you today greatly appreciative of the influence that you had in our lives. I've spent some time the last couple of weeks visiting with former teammates and friends throughout the years. I see about 10 of them back here. It's a blessing to stand with them and to celebrate you on this day. A lot made it back here for the celebration. it's a blessing to collect my thoughts and realize how good we had it at MUS back in the day. That's what my parents always told me. But then when you start working at another school, you really do realize how good you had it. Idiosyncrasies, I think I kind of pronounced the word right. Yeah, truly all around this room, and these men stewarded us, and Coach Batey did me, especially through some hard times and tough years in Loco Parentes. You served with a lot of us. Themes resonate as I got together with these guys. You just heard some of those comments, and I trust these truths will relate to your time with Coach Batey as well when your paths cross. I'll do my best to flesh these out in the brief time that we have together. I will summarize these themes with 4 C's. I'm really sorry, I've been a Presbyterian for a long time. First is commitment. We've heard about this. A consistent theme for all of us was commitment, as is the sport of cross country. It's a tough sell, if you will. Coach, you taught us how to grind, set goals, to plan, how to love and appreciate the sport. There was a system with you, structure, discipline, a plan. As you would always remind us, there are no shortcuts to Nashville, the state meet. Miles to go before we sleep. Something that easily rolled off your tongue when we didn't get as much sleep. That was very difficult. Many miles, slow and fast, long and short, repeat after repeat on this track behind us, all that meant something. Hard work was good and necessary. The process was not going to be easy. You stuck through us through thick and thin. When our minds went elsewhere on schoolwork, other guys besides me. College future choices, ladies, you kept our focus, as you would say, keep your eyes on the prize. You molded us well. You kept us committed to the task ahead. You built a team. That is not an easy or enviable task for a sport that is relatively individually oriented like cross country. You showed us your commitment by running alongside of us to think, and we've heard it from these other guys, Brian, so well put, standing in the mud, the rain, running hills. You ran by our side. Not many coaches could claim that. What a blessing it was for me when I started coaching to be able to run with my team as well. But what an impression that made upon us. You poured into us and were willing to put in the work that you called us to. We wanted to fight for you and with you as well. I think the Grizzlies took this phrase from you in the 91 team, grit and grind, as they say around these parts still, but you took this ragtag bunch of athletes and turned us into something. You believed in our potential more than we did even ourselves. You believed in the collective power of team. Most importantly, though, you taught us to care about things bigger than us, care about others more than ourselves, care about each other, and to care about the process. One interesting thing about running with Coach Batey was his innovation. Maybe you've seen an Instagram that's been out recently about how to coach cross country. It's not all that complicated. You take your kids to a park. You've seen this. It's been out recently. You actually jog to the park. You tell the kids to run when they get there. It's not really that complicated. But we had an innovator in Coach Batey. He instituted CrossFit before it was cool. Clark Tower stair workouts, Shazam. I think we did that one time. Almost died that day. Tough and dizzying. Pre-race visual imaging. Yes, pre-race visual imaging. Coach Batey, cutting edge as he was, took guys that probably didn't have as much sleep at the end of the day. Before the meet, we would lay down on the floor, on our backs, in air conditioning with the lights off, and he would visualize the race for us. I think we stayed awake most of the time, but these things did seep in, and we had some success, probably from visualizing and all the many miles we put in. 100 hill repeat days at Shelby Farms. I think some coaches get sued for this today, but he ran with us. Indian runs out to Germantown Road. There are people still probably out on Germantown Road that were wondering what these MUS guys were doing. The guy in the back would sprint up to where the guy in the front was. It was beautiful. It kept us all involved. 7 guys running together, not anybody running ahead or behind. A dusk till dawn race from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. unbiblical. We ran all night long. Well, it had to be a coach that we cared for and wanted to run for to do something crazy like that, putting on that effort. I think all of us took power naps along the way that night, but not Coach Batey. I got a lot of miles, and that Waffle House meal was glorious the next morning. Parachutes on the football field. It was almost like, what's Coach Batey going to do this week? How long were parachutes cool, Coach Austin? We had it for a while, but the parachute wore out. So Coach Batey found a new method called overspeed training, where it was attached a rubber band to a harness to a guy in front and a guy in back. And he would hold the guy in the back, and the guy in front would sprint ahead, and eventually he would let you go. It was actually kind of scary. And one of my great memories out here on this football field by the track was running behind this 6'6" Dutchman, this flying Dutchman named Bjorn Reckelhoff, who was not a recruited athlete from Amsterdam. Not quite sure how he got here, but when he got here, he was really fast. And I still have scars on my chest from Coach Batey holding on too long, and my overspeed, I could not catch up with the Dutchman. Was hoping that 6'6" fellow would walk in at some point, but maybe too far away for him. The Zizzers, as our buddies emailed and texted back and forth, we remembered this great team from West Plains, Missouri. Coach Batey was not going to let these guys beat us and have us revere them in their candy stripe uniforms. He was going to take us to West Plains, the promised land, the capital of running, at least so we thought, in Missouri, to Joe Bill Dixon's backyard. These guys were nuts. This is what they did for a living there. They had hills. They had many hills. We got up with them, ran in the morning, learned from their coach, and ran with them in the afternoon. I actually saw these guys run in Memphis a couple of weeks ago. They're still really, really fast. Nike running camp in Asheville. Coach Batey exposed us to the best and showed us what we could be. He got us out of our comfort zone many times. 30 years later, we don't talk about these trips to North Carolina, about the running parts and the woods and the mountains and the trails. We talk about the beautiful stories that come with it. That's the experience that Coach Batey gave us. He exposed us again to the best. We used to talk about grit and resilience with our kids and students in school. I'm sure every educator in here and or parent remembers that. And then COVID came along. But I credit MUS and Eddie Batey with driving grit and grind home to me during my 6 years here, and a lot of teammates would attest to that as well. We didn't learn instant gratification at MUS. Work was and work is a virtue. Can I get an amen out there? Coach, we benefited tremendously from your commitments in our lives during those formative years. As teacher and coach myself these days, I often think of what you did for me as I get to pour into my students. What a blessing that is. Second, community. Perhaps more difficult than training young athletes is trying to build a community. You taught us how to keep each other accountable. Looking back, one of the most incredible successes, and I think it's been mentioned, of those teams was the fact that we got up 4 or 5 mornings a week during the season to work out. Coach Batey had us working out the morning of races. Our parents didn't even know what we were doing. It wasn't often. We were nervous, but it paid off because he read the books and did the training, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. But our team was built those mornings. Our bonds were forged then. And again, I got the definition of student athlete wrong here. I got the order mixed up. Sorry, guys, I brought down our team GPA. It was the highest on the campus, even with my contribution. But some of these guys were grinding to the wee hours, and were up every morning, every next morning to train as a team, because that's what we did those 3 months. During those times, the team bond was forged. We so enjoyed the bond. Common road trips to Nashville, to Jonesboro, Pizza Indian Classic. How about that one? Orgill and Millington, Birmingham, to run a mere 3 miles turned into a fun, sometimes life-changing experience with Coach Batey. Coach, you built a culture. You built a team, campus lab after campus lab. I jumped ahead. You instilled the experience in us, in our culture, and it was an excellent culture. That's a bonus C for us all. We all joined the cross-country team for different reasons. Coach Peters, Judd, this is beautiful. Coach Peters kept me after a basketball practice one day and said, "Saxon, you need to retire and retire quickly from basketball." Judd was here a minute ago. Judd, are you still here? He said I was too squirrely, bless his heart, and he was right. He was right. Still some squirrel left to this day, but he told me that cross country would be my thing, and that Eddie Batey built good teams and made it fun. Man, I'm thankful that we had men back then that could look us in the eyes and say, "Hey, I love you, but you need to stop this basketball." In my world, and maybe it happened twice this week, parents come in because you said something a little too mean to their child. Amen. Thank you all for being mean, Coach Haywood, Batey, Austin. Barry Ray was actually really mean back in the day. Speaking of, he's here somewhere, and I benefited. There's Mark Counts. I asked functional analysis and trigonometry. Yeah, you guys were mean, but I asked for most all of it, so I appreciate that. I wish it was the 90s again, but it's 2024 and I can't be mean anymore. But thank you, Coach Peters. He was the cross-country coach here for the record at MUS. Jerry and the Pacemakers, I believe, is what that era was called. Whatever reason we joined, we got so much more out of the journey than we expected. As evidenced by all who came this way to run cross-country, Coach, you built an incredible community and culture, which was not easy to do. We're indebted to you for that. Championships, that starts with C as well. We can't forget that. We did taste some success along the way. The plan and system that started on hot summer days, starting June the 1st, and usually culminated at the steeplechase in Nashville on cold days in early November. It worked out. We were fit, we were focused, we were a team with one goal. We were well coached, we had a plan, and we went for it. It wasn't 7 individuals and a coach. We were all there together to encourage each other and to fight to the finish. All counted. We knew that we needed to do it together as a team. Of course, we visualized it the night before. We won 2 of these state cross-country titles back in 91 and 92. Brentwood Academy, speaking of bless your hearts, we dominated those guys. It was joyous. Brentwood Academy, I had a roommate in college from Brentwood Academy. They actually weren't all that mean. Y'all made us think they were really mean, but they were good people. But their team wasn't. But we let those guys have it those 2 years. I would like to just take a brief moment, and if you can cue Bruce Springsteen's Glory Days, if we could just bear with me just for a couple of seconds here. As an aside, the public school division in Tennessee, correct me if I'm wrong, is up to 6A independent schools, have a large and small division. Back in the day, there were only 2 races there. They put the single A and double A kids on the line together, all kids from across the state, public, private, independent, whoever, and then 3A ran. Things are a bit different these days. I'm not giving a shot to other guys, but we can actually blame Brentwood Academy. I think they went to the Supreme Court for that reason in the mid-90s. Didn't they do some cheating or something? We don't have, not Brentwood. All right, anyway, it was competitive, and we were proud to get those titles. Championships were great. All the hard work was validated, but the champions that all of Coach Batey's runners remember the most were champions of character. We've heard it. We all remember it. Performance was important to Coach Batey, but it was the men we were becoming that was more important to him. He cared about our souls. It's easy to say, but doubly hard to put into practice. That was a beautiful motto, one that we didn't understand until we grew up when we were sophomores, but it's something they lived and pointed us to every day. It seemed like an inconsequential statement through the years, but it meant the world to us when we saw the fruit of his goals as we were maturing. And all of our reminiscing, all of us went back to that all-important theme for us. I think we could all attest to those days when our time was over from running for Coach Batey and with teammates, even after titles, a weird feeling. The championships were great, but there was an emptiness that the season and the journey and the morning runs and the hills and Shelby Farms was over, Coach Batey did a tremendous job of building that culture. Coach Batey is the true champion of character here. He dealt with an inordinate amount of crudeness, not for me, immaturity from me, sarcasm, laziness, all of you men did, which we're very appreciative for. But he molded us into champions, not only champions, but men as well. The time sacrifice away from family, from honor, from Xander, the many papers to grade and lesson plans to make. We felt like we were his singular focus on campus in the midst of a long school day of counseling many miscreants and pouring into classes, psychology classes, and all day long. We felt that we were his singular focus. Every day was a teachable moment with Coach Batey. Coach, your life poured into ours. The difficulty of serving students in their formative years, the difficulty is that you don't always get to see the fruit of your labors. I hope that you understand that your investment to all in this room, young and old, was well worth it. MUS is the better for it. Because of you, the much better for it. You as other teachers and coaches that poured into us are the bedrock and the force behind this place. So often today, the external is the most important piece for parents in considering the school. Facilities, sports records, academic success, test averages, food served in the lunchroom, yes, dance teams. It's the internal, though, that matters. It is the folks in the trenches that carry the mission and tradition of the school. When I consider your portrait, Coach, I see honesty, humility, virtue, perseverance, a life well lived, service, kindness, focus, sacrifice, vision, and care. Character traits you modeled before us, you represent and represented MUS well. Finally, Coach, you showed us Christ. When I look back to these years with you, I'm reminded constantly of Romans 12, 1 and 2, where Paul writes, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual act of worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Coach, you labored beside us and before us and for us. You encouraged us, you challenged us, you rebuked us out of love when necessary. That was me a lot. You were, like I said earlier, loco parentis, admirably for a lot of us. You challenged us to think. You modeled manhood, passion, kindness, and service. Thank you, Coach Batey, for making us better men and champions of character.
For the record, Coach Ray, I didn't think you were mean. Thank you, Malcolm. What an impactful perspective on Eddie's influence. The portrait of Mr. Batey is the work of Brandon, Mississippi artist Catherine Buchanan. Buchanan's works can be found in universities, courthouses, and corporations across the country. She is a member of Portrait Society of America, Mississippi Oil Painters Association, and Oil Painters of America. For inspiration, Mrs. Buchanan believes that there is something beautiful about every person, and she tries to pick up on what is good and positive during her process. We are pleased to be adding Mrs. Buchanan's work to our growing collection. Unfortunately, Mrs. Buchanan could not be with us this evening. She is represented locally by Mrs. Elizabeth Francis, a broker for Portraits, Inc. Now I would like to ask Honor and Eddie to join Mr. Sanders and me as we unveil the portrait.
Thank you. First, I want to acknowledge our head of school. Also, appreciate our MC and the other members of the Alumni Executive Board for at least temporarily having taken leave of their senses. Likewise to Ellis, Malcolm, and David, thank you for your overly generous, certainly hyperbolic, and perhaps delusional sentiments. You are, however, most kind. As the New Testament says thrice, Christians are encouraged to outdo one another in showing honor. So, I am so happy to see everyone. It means in part that I've not been punked by Horace and Perry. But seriously, it's my joy to share this occasion with everyone here, and it provides me an opportunity to express a few fond feelings about this place. My first recollection as a new employee happened on the second day of teacher in-service. While Coach Peters explained how to complete TSSAA eligibility forms, a workout-clad student appeared at the door and politely asked to borrow the key to the basketball storage closet. I watched as Coach Peters sorted the keys, located the proper key, and handed it to the student. The key was still attached to his massive key ring. That ring contained every master key to the entire school. I don't recall exactly, but I think my head spun twice around. Yet the seeming normalcy of the handoff made me suspect this is a different place, that this level of trust might not be an aberration, that this might actually be a community of trust and honor with the high expectations of ethical behavior. Like the steady pressing down of the stamp upon the wax, I was impressed. And yet, as serious as truth and honor should rightfully be, MUS has also been a place of mirth and wit. To paraphrase a great headmaster, we take our work seriously, ourselves, not so much. To wit, I can not unhear Mr. Eichner announcing in assembly that my wedding vows included to love, honor, and obey, honor, and honor, honor. Or in the English department minutes, reflecting a submission by Dr. Jeffrey Gross and Dwight Petty, was a, quote, gross and petty proposal. Or the lower schooler who was asked to take minutes, and at the conclusion of the meeting, he looked at his watch and submitted 13. Or the student I beckoned into my office with a jaunty, "Come forth," and he looked and said, "But I don't have fourth free." Or the student trying to avoid plagiarism who wrote that the mayor won in a spillway. Maybe it was a commissioner. And I realized he meant in a runoff. So good. Or perhaps my personal favorite, since this class has been mentioned twice, the student who responded to a life science question about reproduction with, "I believe sex education should be taught every day, twice." I do want to express my deep gratitude to Kathy Buchanan for her artistic vision and for her extraordinary talent. I appreciate her gracious guidance throughout the portrait process, and I really appreciate her ability to age regress a photograph. Before my final expression of gratitude, I would like to take a few minutes to provide the context for some of the items in the painting, which from where you're seated, you may not be able to see. But on the right side, you see 3 books. Bottom 2 are the first year and last year yearbooks of my employment. The one sitting on the top is the same book that Dr. Harkins is holding in his hands. It's Metropolis of the American Nile, which served as the backbone for our Introduction to Memphis Leaders course. He was a great mentor and a better human being. On the other side, there are 3 items. One is a Rise Against Hunger heat-sealed bag of grain. That activity was a large service event that was held right in this very dining hall. At the bottom is a book. The title is obscured by my arm, but it's Jesus and the Poor. That's significant to me because it was written by my father after Dr. King's assassination. The third item there is a cross, which was handmade, given to me by a friend and confidant. It symbolizes for me the supreme suffering servant, loving mercy, and walking humbly with his God. Those 6 items rest on a desk. That's my maternal grandfather's desk. He worked tireless hours in his realty company, but that desk also symbolizes to me his love of family. And the runners in the background. That comes from a photograph by Brandon Earhart taken 33 years ago, next Thursday. The badge has been referenced several times, the badge that says Champions of Character. That was the theme for those several years. On the back, though, there's a title to the picture. It's called A Moving Experience. And when I look at that picture, it is certainly a moving experience for me. But the thing we wanted to take away from those seasons was a commitment to preparation and also endeavor and challenge, and finally, and most importantly, love and support of teammates. So in parting, and at long last, I again want to thank you for this recognition and express gratitude for your attendance and attention. Thank you. Settle down, or I'm going to send you to the principal's office.
Okay, that's it for the evening. On behalf of the Alumni Executive Board, thank you all for coming out for this splendid event. Congratulations again, Coach Batey. I hope everybody has safe travels home. Thanks again for coming. Good night.